Stats Report Week 9. Welcome back to Talking Giants. My name is Justin Penik, and the New York Football Giants are 3-6 heading into their bye. Got to win before the bye, so now we can take a week off. We can take a breath. Glad that we got that win before the bye. I'm going to get a little frustrated with the offense and then celebrate the defense has been part of the course, I feel like, for the last 2 years, with the exception of the beginning of this year with the defense, right? Get a little bit frustrated with the offense, but before I get frustrated with the offense and I rip them apart, Giants coaching staff and the Giants as a team, they're going to have an opportunity towards the second half of this season to prove people like myself wrong and to prove that they're right. Giants could lose 2 more games and finish with a record above 500, which if you told me at the start of the season that if the Giants finish with a record of 9-8, I'll take it. I wanted 10, I'll take 9. I wanted a record above 500 this year, so they've certainly dug their grave, and I think they're lying in it now with starting 6 games under 500 through 9 games. But with the easier schedule in the second half, don't think it will happen, but it can happen. It certainly can happen. And the way that they've been playing games, they've been in games, but unfortunately we're not in a position right now to be getting moral victories. We're in a position where we have to be winning games. The Giants spent so much money this offseason. The odds are certainly stacked against them, but hey, do it. Do it. You're getting guys healthy. You're getting guys back. You got to win. I want this football team to win, and I want this football team to prove me wrong. So let's talk about the offensive side of the ball first, and this is why I don't think that they can sustain any kind of success despite the coaching staff's approach of playing conservative and playing the time of possession, playing the clock, playing field position, playing good defense, which hopefully playing good defense is sustainable. But from Mike Clay, when the Giants are scoring an NFL low 41 offensive touchdowns through the last 25 games since 2020, and that is an average of 1.64 offensive touchdowns per game. When you're doing that in a league that is predicated on scoring points and when a league that is predicated on offense, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really, really tough for you to kind of sustain any kind of success when you don't even average more than 2 touchdowns per game, right? When you're only averaging 1 offensive touchdown per game, which the Giants have done the last 2 weeks, 1 offensive touchdown per game. So what I want to do now is I want to get right to the explosive play report, and that's going to take me to some of the talking points that I have on the offense side of the ball. 2 plays of 20-plus yards for the Giants. One was the Evan Ingram 30-yard touchdown. Haven't used Evan Ingram vertically down the field, and when we actually did it, it worked out great, right? Instead of force-feeding him the ball like he's Jason Witten, it worked in the second half of 2020, and they just haven't tried to replicate it in 2021. They did it there, and boom, it creates an explosive play. Devonte Booker also had a run of 20-plus yards, so those were the 2 plays of 20-plus yards. There were 4 total runs of 10-plus yards, and the Evan Ingram 30-yard touchdown is the only passing play of 15-plus yards. So I get it. The Giants are now ranked bottom of the barrel in the NFL in explosive play rate, especially explosive pass play rate. I get why that, not going to say it's excusable, but I get why it's the case. When they had Andrew Thomas, and even without Kenny Alday, even without guys like Sterling Shepard and Kadarius Toney at times, they were like average middle of the pack when they had Andrew Thomas at left tackle. But that's not a good enough excuse for me for being this bad. When you have Kenny Alday, when you have Kadarius Toney on the football field, that's not a good enough excuse to be so ultra conservative, especially the pass plays between 15 to 19 yards. Because there have been games this week, and if you watch the explosive play report, we've talked about how, hey, the Giants have only had maybe 2 or 3 plays of 20-plus yards, but they have like 5 plays of 15 to 19 yards. And that's good. I highlight those plays for a reason, because they deserve to be highlighted. Not every play needs to be a 25, 30-yard bomb, right? I'm not looking for that every single game. I'm just looking for ways that the Giants can move the chains and flip the game schedule, flip the game script, taking yourself from being inside your own 10-yard line, getting a 15 to 19-yard game, then boom, that brings you close to midfield, right? So even those plays are very valuable, and when you can't even do that, and last week, again, the Giants against Kansas City, which Kansas City was a defense that gave up 15 to 19-yard plays left and right, Giants didn't even produce a single one, and this week against Las Vegas, they only produced 1. So if the explosive play wasn't going to be there, I still want that 15 to 19-yard play to be there, and it just flat out wasn't. It was not. The Evan Ingram 30-yard touchdown was the only 15 to 19, 15-plus yard passing play there was. And when you look at the average depth of target for Daniel Jones, that's again where I look at that scenario saying the offensive line excuse that a lot of people have been giving for Jason Garrett. Well, how do you expect Jason Garrett to navigate with this offensive line? How do you expect Daniel Jones to navigate with this offensive line? Daniel Jones' average depth of target against Las Vegas and his average air yards per passing attempt was 3.7. Against Kansas City, it was 4 yards. So that means on average, Daniel Jones is throwing the ball 4 yards down the field per passing attempt. That's Pop Warner. That's Pop Warner. I thought it was bad last year when Daniel Jones was averaging, 5, 6, 7 air yards per passing attempt last year in 2020. I was, we were frustrated about that. And the offensive line was bad then too. And I'm showing this example of the stopwatch. If I have to do this every single week to prove, because I am really on like a myth-busting mood this week. If I have to get this stopwatch out every single week to prove that concepts that go near the sticks or a little bit past the sticks, that they don't take 3-4 seconds to develop, or even some passing plays and even some deep concepts that they don't take 3-4 seconds to develop, if I have to do that every single week, I'm going to. I will get this stopwatch out every single week, and I will show you. It does not take all that long for some of these concepts to go near the sticks. Kenny Alday hasn't had a contested catch opportunity at all this year, but he's been given like these skinny posts, these mini posts that are basically extended slants, but they're not fully, long developing posts down the field. That's been Kenny Galladay's bread and butter, and he had 2 of those plays against Las Vegas. And that play has worked more often than twice in a game, where Kenny Galladay should be getting more than 2 targets in a game. Kadarius Toney should be getting them more. Kadarius Toney should be getting a little bit more targets and reps at wide receiver where he's targeted than reps where he's at quarterback and we're giving him a read option, right? It makes sense. But Joe Judge after the game, when given an opportunity to kind of pivot and caveat from saying, oh, well, why wasn't Kenny Galladay and Kadarius Toney targeted more? He said that was the game plan. That was the approach. We wanted to run the ball. And that's fine. But there needs to be balance. And I think Giants fans, because the offensive line has been a problem for so long, this is even stemming before Dave Gettleman, but this is Dave Gettleman's fault first and Jason Garrett's fault second. Because the offensive line has been a problem for so long, Giants fans, I think, have been brainwashed to accept terrible offensive play, but because the Giants don't have a good offensive line, we have to put our hands up and we can't do anything. No! Rise above it! Coaches are supposed to rise above it. That's what they're supposed to do. These plays are not taking 3-4 seconds to develop. I showed a minute worth of sample size. I will go back over the bye week. Follow me on social media. I will continue to show the exceptions. Do you need to have a good offensive line to throw the ball consistently down the field? Yes. But my point is 4 yards for an average depth of target and 4 yards, 3.7 yards, average air yards, that's Pop Warner. That's not the NFL. And the offensive line is not a good enough excuse when there are certain plays that take less than 2 seconds or less than 2.5 seconds for you to throw towards the sticks. That's not a good enough excuse. The offensive line is not a good enough excuse for me on a consistent basis for you to be so ultra-conservative. And Giants fans, I think, unfortunately, and it is Dave Gettleman's fault, they have been brainwashed because the offensive line has been bad for so long that is the only thing that we can point to that says, yep, that makes sense as to why the offense is bad. Rise above it. Daniel Jones can. He's proven he can. Kenny Galladay doesn't take all that long to give him a contested catch opportunity. You sign him $72 million. $72 million. And he doesn't have a contested catch opportunity once this year during a game that's non-garbage time. Kadarius Toney, why'd you draft him in the first round? Why is Evan Ingram still on the team? Could have traded him over the offseason once you signed Kyle Rudolph. Why is he still on the team if you're not going to use him, in which Evan Ingram's best strength is running a straight line? Doesn't take all that long for a play to develop where you're running a straight line down the field in a contested catch situation. Why is Golden Tate throughout 2019 and 2020 getting more contested catch opportunities than Kenny Galladay? Why? It's not just the offensive line. It's not. And I feel bad calling people out. Don't be brainwashed. Don't let this coaching staff that is inept. I don't want to call them stupid. Don't let this coaching staff that is inept on the offensive side of the ball brainwash you into thinking that it's just the offensive line. And by the way, Jason Garrett's quick game actually results in Daniel Jones holding onto the ball for longer at times. Because his stupid stick route play, nobody gets open, Daniel Jones holds onto the ball and can't go anywhere with the ball. So the quick game is at times forcing Daniel Jones to hold onto the ball for longer, which does not help the offense. And also what doesn't help the offense is when you continually run the ball on first and second down, and then you force Daniel Jones into a third and long situation, that is the exact opposite of helping your offensive line. Helping your offensive line would be throwing on first down, emphasizing the quick game, because on first down, there are things that are a little bit more open for you, since it's a less predictable down of, hey, could you run the ball? Could you throw the ball? The playbook is kind of a little bit more open on first down. And if you avoid those third and longs, it will ultimately make your offensive line better. Not enough people are talking about that. And that's on the play caller. Okay. One final note on the offense side of the ball. Devonte Booker had a good game. There were some next-gen stats. Well, that's quite a transition, right? There are some next-gen stats that you really like to see from Devonte Booker. Basically, Devonte Booker proved why he was signed to his contract. A solid receiving back, a solid blocking back, but also just an efficient running back overall. His efficiency metric was really good from next-gen this past weekend. His time behind the line of scrimmage was pretty solid. It's what we expect from Devonte Booker, and his rushing yards over expected per attempt, it was above 1 yard. That's exactly what we expect from Devonte Booker, and actually the rushing yards over expected per attempt, that was one of the league's best over the weekend. So I'll take it. I will take it. And this is if you're a fan of running the ball, this is a really good stat for you, and you can use this stat with some of your friends. Since 2020, there have been 2 games where a running back has received 20 carries in a single game. So one running back receiving 20 carries in a single game. Wayne Gallman, 24 carries, 94 yards, and a touchdown versus the Bengals, Week 12 in 2020. We did win that game. Devonte Booker had 21 carries for 99 yards versus Las Vegas, Week 9, 2021. Giants offense, they did win both those games, but also, a little caveat, they only scored 1 offensive touchdown in each game. So, this is where our good defense comes into account. And that's exactly what we are going to talk about next. Let's get to the defensive side of the ball. So you can see as time has gone on, the Giants defense, when you look at the EPA tiers and when you look at the movement over time, here you see the NFC East tiers, right? You can see the Giants defense and their EPA, they have gone up as the year has gone on. The offense has definitely gone down a little bit, but the defense has taken the biggest jump up to kind of returning to average and returning to where they were in 2020. And the big thing with Patrick Graham, he doesn't care how many yards he allows. He doesn't care if he is worse than the National Football League in yards per game, yards per drive. What matters to him is clamping down inside the red zone, allowing field goals over touchdowns. Now, I think if it were really up to Patrick Graham, they wouldn't allow a lot of yards, right? But throughout these last 2 years, he's had to really deal with the deficiencies on the defense side of the ball. That really is the pass rush. Last year, they had a deficiency in the secondary of CB2, so really trusting James Bradbury when he was playing at an all-pro level, and this year he's taken a little bit of a step down, but having a really good secondary and kind of relying on those guys to prevent the big explosive passing play, and they'll allow teams to churn out drives and to kind of methodically move down the field. But once that field shrinks inside the red zone, that is where they clamp down, and that is where the 2020 Giants defense was best, and that is where, throughout the last 3 weeks, that is where this Giants defense has been best. And you've been seeing the stats that I've been putting on the screen, where the Giants defense in weeks 1 through 6, the red zone defense, they were pretty bad, allowing almost 5 yards per passing play inside the red zone through the first 6 weeks of the season. Versus weeks 7, 8, and 9, the Giants defense allowing 1.4 yards per passing attempt on 22 attempts inside the red zone, and the league average from weeks 7 to 9 being 3.6 yards. So the Kansas City Chiefs, we talked about it last week, in the field zone report, if you want to call it. The Chiefs offense, they ran 19 plays inside the red zone, averaging 1.5 yards per play. And the Raiders on Sunday, they ran 18 plays inside the red zone over 6 drives, averaging 2.1 yards per play, 13 passes, 1.1 yards per attempt, and 5 runs at 5 yards per attempt. So you could be looking at this, and you could be looking at these stats saying, well, the Giants' run defense inside the red zone, they're not that good. They're still allowing a lot of runs. So, but what the Giants are doing, at least in my opinion, this is what I've seen, and you could see in the compilation of all the plays that took place inside the red zone from the Raiders this past week, is the Giants rarely allow teams to get really inside the 10-yard line, inside the 5-yard line, where once they cross the 20-yard line, they clamp down. And I'm sure teams want to prioritize running the ball inside the 10-yard line, inside the 5-yard line, but when they're throwing on early downs on first down inside the red zone, when they're still at the 20-yard line and when the field is kind of still a little bit more spread out where it's a little easier to throw the ball, that is where they're forcing incompletions. And, hey, they're even forcing a turnover too, where Quincy Rochet, his strip sack came inside the red zone, and that is really, really good. Where it's kind of funny how the dichotomy between Jason Garrett and Patrick Graham is willing to allow field goals left and right? He's willing to say, hey, you can kick as many field goals as you want, but as a Giants team and as a Giants defense, we're going to take that and we're going to allow it. Versus the Giants offense, they're very complicit and they're very okay with kicking field goals, where over like 32% of their points are coming strictly from field goals, which is like the highest in the National Football League. So you can't get much more of a dichotomy between Patrick Graham and Jason Garrett, and Patrick Graham is like, he's drawing things up in the sand, Joe Judge says after the game, right? He's changing things mid-game, whereas Jason Garrett, you feel like he hasn't changed since 2009. So I find that to be really, really funny. But also, a significant thing to look at is I want to look at the Giants' performance when you look at the 21-yard line to the 21-yard line. So basically, the field outside the red zone, the field outside of the Giants being, in the red zone, and then the Giants being in their, or the other team being in their own territory, right? So that's where I want to look at the field zone kind of performance too, where they still are relatively allowing a lot of yards. Week 7, 8, and 9 from the 21-yard line to the 21-yard line. Teams have thrown the ball 69% of the time, averaging 6.6 yards per attempt. An average, the league average is 7.5. And they're running the ball 31% of the time, averaging 5 yards per carry, when the league is allowing through that span 4.6 yards per carry. So yes, especially as a passing offense, the Giants aren't allowing as many yards per attempt, but teams are throwing the ball more, which I find that to be, number one, impressive, but number two, kind of backwards. That teams, week 7, 8, 9, they've been throwing the ball a lot more versus the Giants. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs, they throw the ball just in general. The Carolina Panthers, they were down for the majority of the game. And the Las Vegas Raiders, they were down for a little bit in the game too, but also they are a relatively pass-heavy team where their rushing offense isn't that great just overall. So teams are throwing the ball more, but this Giants defense is playing better. And I simply think it is because they're clamping down in the red zone. Obviously, they forced a couple turnovers too, where, it's fun fact, Giants are forcing turnovers at the 9th highest rate in the National Football League, but they're also leading the league in dropped interceptions. So imagine if they haven't, dropped so many interceptions this year, they probably would be the team in the NFL that leads the league in turnovers and turnovers per drive. But I bring up this stat of the 21-yard line to the 21-yard line and showing the averages, the yards per attempt, and the rushing yards per attempt to show Giants offense, they're still allowing a lot of yards, and they're still allowing drives to sustain themselves down the field. But what they're doing, and that's similar to 2020, is they're clamping down in the red zone. That is the biggest key factor for this Giants defense right now. And over the last 3 games, the Giants' red zone defense, they're allowing a touchdown 23.1% of the time. They're second in red zone defense over the last 3 weeks, and fourth in third down defense, only allowing a conversion for a first down 28.2% of the time, again, over the last 3 games. So something that's also different from weeks 1 to 6 through 7 to 9, the Giants defense, they allowed in weeks 1 through 6 an explosive pass play at the 13th highest rate in the National Football League. They allowed an explosive rushing play at the 10th least rate. So weeks 7 to 9, they have allowed the explosive pass play at the 4th least rate in the NFL and allowed an explosive rush play at the 11th highest rate. So again, that's a little backwards, right? Where weeks 1 through 6, when the defense was worst, they were seemingly almost a better rushing defense. And then weeks 7 to 9, when the defense is clamped down a little bit more, they are seemingly almost a worse rushing defense, which that just kind of tells me that defending the pass and stopping the pass is a little bit more important in the NFL, especially stopping the explosive pass play. When you stop the explosive pass play and when you force teams to run so many plays in a given drive, drives are going to stall out in the red zone. I've said it all the time with the Giants, and now you're seeing that impact of the Giants stopping the explosive pass play. You are seeing how the Giants offense usually stalls in the red zone. You're seeing that with the opponents that they're playing. The Giants, going back to their formula, what they did in 2020, they were the defense that stopped the explosive pass play at the third least rate in the National Football League. And then week 7 to 9, the weeks that they've been most successful on the defensive side of the ball, they're stopping it at the fourth least rate in the National Football League. So overall, I like how Patrick Graham is getting the results that he got in 2020, and now he's getting it in 2021 against some really good quarterbacks and against some really good opponents. Also did a pretty good job against Tampa Bay last year. I know Tampa Bay, Tom Brady's second year in the system. Antonio Brown is more of an established player. However, his health is maybe in question, so I don't know if he's going to be healthy by the time that we play Monday Night Football. But this Patrick Graham defense did a good job of keeping the team in the game last year, despite however many Daniel Jones turnovers. Really did a good job where we were a 2-point conversion away from tying that in regulation, that game last year, Monday Night Football. And ironically enough, we're playing the Monday Night Football again, except this time in Tampa Bay. So can Patrick Graham continue this trend like he was doing in 2020? What made this defense good in 2020, we're seeing that happen in weeks 7 through 9. Can it continue? That's the big question. So I want to highlight some players before we head on out of here. Some player spotlights. Quincy Rochet and Oshane Ximines, a little bit of stat comparison. You see Quincy Rochet in simply just 100 snaps through 2 games, where Oshane Ximines has gotten 182 snaps throughout the entire season. Quincy Rochet is better in every single statistical category. Is it anything significant? No, but playing this young guy in Quincy Rochet could be the difference between he gets a strip sack and he calls game against the Las Vegas Raiders, and Oshane Ximines jumps offside against Kansas City and loses us the game. I mean, that's the difference there. So I hope when Oshane, when we come off the bye, that Oshane continues to be kind of a scratch, or even if he's not scratched on game day, I hope that they prioritize playing Quincy Rochet over Oshane Ximines, because he really just does nothing for you. And Jake Barrow, shout out to you, one of our listeners. He did an awesome stat comparison between James Bradbury the first 9 games of the season last year and Adoree Jackson the first 9 games of this season. A lot of people have really not liked Adoree Jackson, and I get it. He drops the interceptions, but that's the only time that you've talked about Adoree Jackson. The only time that we've mentioned Adoree Jackson's name and have got frustrated with him and ripped our hair out is when he's dropped an interception. James Bradbury has allowed some touchdowns this year. Adoree Jackson, don't really remember any plays where he allows big yards and big stuff. So you see the stat comparison. Everybody was going goo gaga over James Bradbury last year, calling him an all-pro. Adoree Jackson's putting up similar numbers, if not a little bit better, and he's getting a lot of hate. I understand Adoree Jackson is largely covering wide receiver 2s, but still, when a cornerback is performing well, when a player is performing well, they deserve the love from the fan base. And I think Adoree Jackson is certainly underrated right now. And I called him a couple weeks ago on the podcast, called him my defensive MVP over Leonard Williams. And I certainly think that is holding up to be true to this point. All right, that is a stats report video. A little bit of player spotlight. A lot of big picture philosophical things on why the Giants offense should be better, why they're conservative, why that's a bad approach, and how the defense is replicating what they've did in 2020 and 2021 the last 3 weeks. There you go. Bye week. Next week, I don't know if we're going to have any kind of stats report video of looking at the Giants season just overall with some things. I feel like I do that every week. I really feel like I look at the Giants season overall every week. So I don't know. I may take the next week off. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. I appreciate all of you. Let's go Big Blue. Go Giants. Road to 9-8. Let's do it. Peace.